Night of the Twisters, Chapter 5, 8 o'clock. Arthur and I flipped on the TV as soon as we got back to my house. He chucked the sack containing his clean socks and Fruit of the Loom underwear onto the sofa, then stretched out there himself. Channel 5 or 1011? I asked. 1011. I moved his feet and sat down next to him. I could hear Mom out in the kitchen, sewing away on Grandma Hatch's birthday dress. Click-clack, clickety-clack, fast and slow, then a long humming stretch where Mom gunned it up for all she was worth. Arthur made one of his terrific accelerating noises, and we both doubled up. The TV show had already started, but that rarely bothers Arthur and me. When we're watching something funny like Laverne and Shirley or Happy Days, we can tune in any old time. When the first commercial came on, I went to the kitchen for some potato chips. I couldn't believe what I saw there. The curtains at the kitchen window were blowing straight in. They looked like something a cartoonist might draw. "Hey!" I shouted for Mom to look. "Isn't that crazy?" I leaned over the sink to peer out, but Super Breeze nearly flattened me. "Would you close that, please?" Mom said. "It's suffocate or blow away, one or the other. You put your bike in the garage, I hope." "Yep." I opened the cupboard where we kept the chips. "You suppose Dad and Grandpa got the tractor running yet?" I asked. "Probably." She lifted the presser foot, and I heard her snipping threads. If Arthur hadn't been there, I'd have sat down and watched her sew. I loved her new machine. It was the last thing she bought before she quit at the hair boutique. She really knew how to operate it, too. Forward, reverse, flip, snip, zigzag, zing, zag, zig, 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 zig. I made zigzagging motions in the air until Mom asked what in the world I was doing. Then I remembered why I had come into the kitchen in the first place. "We're out of chips. Dan, if that's what you want." I settled for soda crackers. I watched Mom as she held the top half of the lavender dress at arm's length to inspect it. "I wonder if Mother Hatch wants the skirt gathered or pleated," she said more to herself. "Why not do both?" I suggested. Mom grinned. She blew a strand of hair out of her face, then pushed back her chair and went to the phone. "I'll be sorry if I don't ask her." "That's funny," I heard her say a minute later. I looked up from spreading peanut butter on crackers to see her staring at the mouthpiece. She clicked the little chrome piece up and down, then dialed again. "Now it's ringing, but no one's answering," she mumbled. Where would Grandma Hatch be on a night like this? I shrugged and carried my plate of crackers back to the living room. Arthur was so glad for the arrival of food that we almost missed the severe weather announcement coming over the TV. "In the St. Paul area, just north of Grand Island." I heard that much. Mom rushed into the dining room area. "Listen!" she shushed us. "In effect until further notice is given. Warnings are being issued for St. Paul, Dannebrog, the surrounding rural areas. Funnel clouds have been sighted near Dannebrog. Persons in those vicinities are urged to take all possible precautions." Mom had her hand over her heart. "St. Paul's northwest, thank God." Arthur sat up, his eyes round. "Grandpa's farm is east, close to Phillips," I explained. "St. Paul's still too close for comfort," Mom added. "Do we have to go to the basement?" I asked. Now that we were all set for the next show, I hoped not. Mom didn't answer. She had her face right up against our big front window, shielding her eyes, trying to see out. Normally she's a lot more casual about storms than Dad is, but she looked worried. "It's pitch black out there," she said. "I've never seen it so dark this early." It was noisy outside as well as dark. Our shake shingles flapping and smacking overhead made me think somebody was up there playing his xylophone on the roof. Minerva didn't like the weather either. She was crouched under Dad's chair with her ears back. No wonder. She'd be carried off like a tumbleweed in one of our stiff prairie winds. I was glad when Mom pulled the drapes for us. "Do we have to go downstairs?" I asked again. "Not yet, Danny. We'll keep listening to the TV." Arthur spoke up. "Tornadoes move from southwest to northeast, remember?" I remembered. Our science class had taken a field trip in April to visit the weather service out at the airport. The meteorologist had shown us how they get the hook echo on radar, how they post a watch, all that technical stuff. Arthur made an arm motions towards a planet hanging in the corner of the room. "It'll head off that way someplace." His expert opinion should have made me feel better, but it didn't. He helped himself to another cracker, then settled back into the sofa cushions. He wasn't worried. Mom's forehead puckered as she walked away. I knew what was on her mind. We were both wishing Dad was home. We watched TV for another few minutes, but I couldn't get into it like before. Not that I was scared exactly. I'd been through dozens of tornado watches in my life, and nothing ever happened though a barn roof got rearranged over in Clay Center one year. Every spring, practically, we have to hit for the cellar, as Grandpa puts it. But when a tornado watch changes to a warning, and when the siren starts, well, that's when things aren't so mellow anymore. "Shouldn't you call your mother, Arthur?" Mom said to him after trying the phone again. "I'm not sure she'd want you to stay here tonight." "Oh, Mom," I groaned. There I was, thinking the sun rose and set on me. "Wait, I'd better call Goldie first," she said. "Someone should run over and check on Mrs. Smiley when she turns that hearing aid down." After a while she hung up again. "Doesn't anybody stay home?" she muttered. By then I was standing in the kitchen doorway, trying to tell her Aunt Goldie had probably gone bowling. "Who you calling now?" I asked instead. Her attacks on the phone were suddenly more interesting than what was happening in living color on the 19-inch screen. "Mrs. Smiley." "Shh." "She's trying to finish a needlepoint cushion for the Presbyterians," Arthur piped up from the sofa. "Yeah," I whispered in Mom's face, remembering, "and I'm supposed to tell you not to forget she's coming Friday for you to fix her hair." All the while Mom was waving her hand for us to be quiet, so I backed away. Next thing I knew, she was at the hall closet, putting her wet red windbreaker on over her jeans and Hastings College t-shirt. "She doesn't answer," she said. "I'm driving over there to make sure she has her TV on. I won't be long. Now listen, both of you." We listened. She was using a very firm voice. "I want you to take this flashlight." She got it off the shelf and handed it to me, "and a blanket, and put them in the downstairs bathroom. I want you to do it this minute." I nodded, trying the flashlight to make sure it worked. "If the siren starts, get Ryan and go downstairs. Don't wake him up if you can help it, all right?" Arthur's eyes got big listening to Mom. He told me once they never go to the basement during windstorms. That figures. They moved here from California. What do they know? Ever hear of a tornado in good old California? Mom went to get a blanket. "I'll be right back," she told us, hooking her purse on her shoulder. "I'm sure nothing's going to happen, but we have to be prepared, right? Your father would have a fit if we ignored the siren." She smiled and waved her car keys at us as she left, barely squeezing out before the door slammed shut again. "Woo-wee!" Arthur exclaimed. "Sounds like my bull roarer outside." I hurried downstairs with the emergency stuff and set it on the bathroom counter. Minerva went with me, scurrying across my feet on the steps, acting the way she does when she wants attention. I picked her up by the middle, smoothed down her stripes, and balanced her on the glass door of the shower. Usually she'll do a tightrope act for me, but she only yowled and jumped off. After giving me her mean jungle look, she sat down to dig at her ear. "You got a flea in there?" I asked, bending to give her a good scratching. She didn't like that either. Upstairs, Arthur was hooting and hollering again. I decided I was missing all the good parts, so I hurried up the short flights of steps with Minerva dashing ahead of me. Sometime in there, in the middle of all that comedy on the screen, the siren began. Now that is a very sobering sound. It's unlike anything else, having its own built-in chill factor. I thought of Mom first. She'd hear it and come back, I told myself. Then I thought of Dad and how far the farm was from town. They wouldn't even hear the siren out there. In half a second I was at the phone dialing 555-2379. 4 rings. Then I heard Grandma's voice. "Grandma!" I shouted into the phone. "Where have you been? There's a tornado just north of GI. The siren's going. Can you hear it?" The voice said something, but it sounded so far away. "Talk louder, Grandma. I can't hear you." The voice faded away entirely. I wasn't even sure it was Grandma's now. "There's a tornado coming. Can you hear me?" Finally there wasn't anything on the line but the sound of another phone ringing very faintly, as if it were in New York or someplace far away. I couldn't figure it out. By then Arthur was standing next to me. I was just about to hand him the phone when, abruptly, the siren stopped. It didn't taper off. It just quit, as if someone snipped it with scissors. Except for the TV, everything around us suddenly seemed very still. "Hey," he said, raising his eyebrows. "They changed their minds." I hung up the phone. I didn't know what was happening. Maybe they got their weather signals crossed, he suggested happily. They could, you know. I read a book about that happening, where this whole fleet of fishing boats put out to sea. He rattled on. I ran to the door thinking I might see Mom pulling into the driveway, but no luck. It's quit blowing, I called over my shoulder to Arthur. Sure enough, the wind had died down. Maybe the storm wouldn't amount to anything after all. That nice, comforting thought had hardly entered my mind when the siren blared forth again. With a jolt, I remembered what Mom had told us to do. We always turn on the radio, Arthur said, already on his way to the kitchen. You want me to? I'll get the weather station. I was hardly listening. I hurried down the bedroom hallway to Ryan's room at the end. I hated like everything to get him up. He'd cry. I knew he'd wake up and cry. Without Mom, Arthur and I would have him screaming in our ears the whole time. When I saw him in his crib, peacefully sleeping on the side of his face, his rear end in the air, I just didn't have the heart to wake him up. I'd wait a minute or two. Mom would be back. Anyway, it's blowing over. I told myself it won't last. Quietly, I closed the door behind me. That's when the light started flickering. In the hallway, I practically had a head-on with Arthur, who was coming at me real fast. The look on his face scared me. There's no... What? There's no radio reception anymore. It just went dead. This guy, he kept saying, tornado alert, tornado alert. Then it went dead. We rushed back to the living room. The TV was flashing these big letters that filled the entire screen. CD, CD, CD. What's it mean? Arthur cried. Civil defense emergency. I whirled around. I'm getting Ryan. The lights flickered again. At the same time, we heard these really strange sounds that stopped us in our tracks. They were coming from the bathroom and the kitchen. Sucking sounds. The drains were sucking. I felt this awful pulling in my ears, too, as if there were vacuums on both sides of my head. I've got to go home, Arthur cried all of a sudden, bolting for the door. I ran after him. You're not! You can't! I grabbed the back of his t-shirt, hauled him around, and pushed him toward the stairs. Get down there! I have to get Ryan. Now go! I don't know what I'd done if he hadn't minded me. We were catching the fear from each other, and even though the siren was screaming on and off again, I didn't know what it was telling us, I knew we had to take cover fast. The lights went out for good just before I reached Ryan's room.